Greetings from Brooklyn Tweed. Today we are talking about selecting colors for stranded color work. Now, you can see I got two swatches here. These are the exact same motifs, the exact same swatches, and they look very, very different. And that's simply because we chose different colors for this motif. Now, the success of colorwork projects starts before you even begin knitting. And so today I want to go through some basic color theory principles that will set you up for success to have more eye-catching, harmonious results in your finished fabric when you're working colorwork. So when you start out with colorwork, it's really tempting to think just about the colors that you want to work with, whatever your favorite colors are, whether those are blues or reds or yellows. But color is actually the second consideration you should be making, and the very most important thing you can be thinking about when you're looking at colors for colorwork is value. Value refers to the lightness or the darkness of any given color. In other words, every single color in the rainbow has a value. You can have a red that is light or a red that is dark. They're both reds, but they're going to behave differently when you're combining them with other colors. So I've got a value scale here that shows 10 different values from the darkest, number 10, all the way to the lightest at number 1. And what I'd like to have you start thinking about is looking at colors and thinking about where they fall in the value range. Are these falling in the dark category, the medium category, or the light category? And that's going to be the very first consideration that we make when we're looking at what kind of colors we want to combine in a project like this. Here I'm looking at a project that has 4 colors, but this principle will apply no matter how many colors, from a simple 2-color project all the way up to something that's using 8 or 10 colors. This is going to be something you want to be considering from the very beginning. If we're starting with a simple 2-color project, like this, a really simple approach, if value is something new to you that you're not used to considering, a really simple approach on colorwork projects, say a 2-color project like this, is to choose one color that's in the light range of the value scale and one color that's in the dark range of the value scale. And you get this really, really crisp, high contrast look. All that extra work you do to make these beautiful colorwork motifs are going to be able to be seen clearly from several feet away, whereas if you were to use the same pattern, but you were to choose colors that were very, very close to each other in the value scale. In this case, we have 2 shades of purple that are they're almost the same value. They might be 1 or 2 shades different, but they're really, really close. And you can see that your results are very dramatically different. And a project like this, while the colors look beautiful together, it may have been a mistake to choose 2 colors that were so close in value. You could have chosen a purple here for the contrast color that was a lighter or a darker value than our background color, and you would have gotten something more like this. Here's another example of working with 2 shades that are in the light family of the value scale. Here's 2 that are in the medium family, and here's a successful that's 1 light, 1 dark. So that's the easiest way to see value in an example, is looking at where value scale is being used in contrast and where it's being used too close in value, too similar in value, and it makes the colors harder to read. In a 3-color project, let's say you're doing a 3-color project, a simple trick to remember is to choose 1 dark, 1 medium, and 1 light, which is what I've done here with this. We have the dark color, this dark blue color that is hitting our dark value family, this gold color here that's falling in the middle of the value family, the mid-range, and then this cream color here that's falling in the light category. You can see how nice and clear this motif reads close up and far away. Here's another variation of it where I went for something a little more tonal. Now I did this on purpose here because I liked the difference, but what was going on here is that there's a much less of a value difference between these 3 colors. Particularly you see these 2 shades of brown. The background color that's dark over here is a sort of light to mid-tone, and the light is just a little bit lighter. So even though the color, like the pink color here, that's also a mid-tone value because it's in a different color family, it helps it come forward a little bit. But overall, if we're looking at these two different choices here, one makes a better use of value scale than the other. So when you're at the yarn store, or more likely assessing your stash at home, and you have a wide variety of color, rather than looking at these and just thinking, I want to work with a color palette of golds and grays or golds and creams, that's great as a starting place, but make sure that as you're looking for your golds and creams, you're finding colors that are in those value scales. So I've got 3 yellows here that are hitting the marks of a dark, a medium, and a light. So these 3 colors would look really nicely together. Whereas this color is also sort of in that mid-tone category. And if we were to do these 3 colors, it'd be harder to read the motif than it would if we swapped one of these mid-tones out for a light, whether it's white or a lighter yellow there. And I'm going to show you a little trick for how to have a shortcut to figure out what value any given color has, using a simple trick anyone can do with their cell phone. One of my very favorite tricks for seeing value in a bunch of colors is using the cell phone trick. So I laid out a bunch of colors here that I'm considering for a 3-color project, but I'm not sure what I'm going to choose yet. Before I actually go in and choose what colors I like, I want to assess the values of these colors. So I'm going to take my cell phone camera and hold it over my colors so I can see them all clearly in the frame. Make sure you have a decent light in the photo and take a picture. And then turn that picture on your phone to black and white. Different phones have different ways to do this, but flip that photo to black and white, and immediately you can see the color values rather than the colors themselves. You can see I've got one really light color here, 2 pretty light colors, 2 that are in the mid category, and 3 that fall into the dark category. So I would then rearrange these colors based on those values. So now I'd use these to rearrange the values that I see here from lightest to darkest as told to me by my photo. That one up there, like this. And now I've arranged my colors by their value scale. So if I'm going to choose 3 different colors, I'm going to choose one from down here in the darks, let's say this guy, one from here in the middle, let's say this guy, and one from the light. And I know that those 3 are going to work together. Now we've assessed the value of our colors. Now let's talk about looking at color hue itself, regardless of what values we have. So I'm going to show you the color wheel here, and you see red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple in this circular relationship. And there's a couple different tricks for beginners working with color theory that you might find helpful in terms of how to combine different colors and know that they're going to work well together. So the first and most common technique is to choose colors that are complementary to one another. And what we mean when we say complementary is that these colors have a cross color wheel relationship. So 2 colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. In this case, we could choose an orange and a blue, a yellow and a purple, or a red and a green. So if color theory is new to you and you want to start off on a good foot, use the complementary color technique and start from there. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to choose a pumpkin orange and a navy blue like you see here in the graphic. You could choose a version of orange and a version of blue and you're still going to be getting the same effect. So keep that in mind. Another thing you may want to consider when you're looking at colors for a colorwork motif is how you use dark and light colors. So you see I've got 2 hats here, same pattern, same motif, same number of colors, 4 colors used in each, but you get a very different effect because you went for the main color as a light color and you have the contrasting colors that are darker on the value scale, or starting with a really, really dark color for your base and having more mid-tones and light colors in the contrasting colors as well. So just another example of how value can give you a pretty different feel to the finished fabric and color scheme you choose. These swatches do the same thing. We start the main color is dark or light, and then the contrasting colors are mirroring those value relationships to create something that looks very, very different, even though it's the same motif. So that's something to consider if you see a pattern and it has a color choice like this in the pattern photography. You might be able to get something quite different, more dramatic, more dark and bold than what you see over here, just based on how you're choosing your values and your colors for that same pattern. The final color trick that you might want to try is to go for a more tonal color relationship. And that means choosing colors that are in the same family, like we showed you here with the yellows, making sure, of course, always that you're having different values represented. So here I have a swatch from our Spearheads pullover, a Colorwork yoke pullover, and I did a high contrast version, so I chose something that's almost a 10, as dark as you can get on the value scale, and paired it with almost a 1, the lightest color you can get. You get this really bold graphic look. It's great for a pattern like this that has bold geometric line work. Now, I wanted to go for a more tonal effect, and so I chose 2 colors in the purple family. And you can see it's a little softer than the first, but because these are the same color family, purples, yet I maintained a value relationship, it works well and gives you another effect. I am a big fan of the tonal relationship with color, so I think about this a lot in my own work, putting colors that are harmonious together, and before moving forward with them, making sure that they're still maintaining their proper value relationships. So let's review what we've learned so far with an example of a single colorwork motif worked in very different ways. This colorwork pattern is from our Ott hat, which you can see here in final form, but a lot of different swatches in different ways of using color. So the first one I'll point out is the symmetrical use of color. These colors, these 3 versions of the pattern here start, the hat color is the same at the start and the end. You have contrast color 1, contrast color 2, and contrast color 3, and they're worked the same all the way throughout. Look how different that same motif looks when we're doing an asymmetrical use of color. So we start with dark and we move to light, or we're starting with yellow and moving towards blue. So these are the same, exact same motif, exact same yarns, but quite a different look. And you can see in the hat itself, we've got one that's really fun, uses a lot of bright colors here, where we started with one, ended with another, and every single time we were using the motif, it's a different color choice. So let's take a look at these swatches and compare which ones look more or less successful than others. So here we have a good example of value being not very well chosen in the upper part and the lower part. You can see I've got one, you can barely tell that there are 2 different colors here. We've got 3 dark colors here, 2 blues and a sort of brown. And because those are so close, they're all in the dark value scale, you don't really see the actual motif, which is a really strong zigzag right here that you miss. Then you get this really strong break in the pattern because we're jumping from a very dark color to a very light color, and up above we're using 4 colors that are just about all in the light range of value. So you look at this portion of the swatch, there's very little contrast, and this portion of the swatch, there's also very little contrast. By comparison, we're making big jumps in value every time we change color, and in this case we're also making color changes. We're making changes in hue, so going from yellow to orange to purple, rather than a more tonal relationship as you see over here. Or here's another more tonal relationship. This one's a little bit more successful than this, even though all of these colors are in the same family, blues and greens. There's a more mindful use of dark to light to dark to light to dark to light again. So it's really that those shifts from one to the other have contrast, and you get this look rather than this one. And those are just some basic tips for you as you're starting out in color work to be thinking about, to have a more professional result, and really to make the most use of your precious time when you're knitting all these beautiful color work motifs.